Hey friends, this is Scott, one of the entrepreneurs in residence at Madison College, and I'm going to talk with you about how you run experiments. So in an earlier slide, in an earlier card that you were working on, I mentioned moving these assumptions from that upper right-hand quadrant over to the left-hand, where you're going from, I don't know anything about these, but they're really important, to, hey, they're still really important, but now I know more about them, so I can then act. So how do you do that? You got to run experiments, and experiments are ultimately something to help you gather data. And the way it works is you are trying to discover this leap of faith assumption that you have and understand that and dispel it, so then you can take the next step. But it's important that you begin in that upper right hand quadrant, and you can map them out. This is a little bit hard to read in the video, but what you're trying to do is run your assumption through this loop here, where you're actually looking at that riskiest assumption in that upper right, and you're creating some kind of target metric. You want to design something to test that metric, that number, and validate it, and then you actually let it run and then see what the results are. And you don't push it in a particular direction, you just let it run and see what happens. So this is known as creating a minimum viable product, an MVP. So you're going to build a thing, an experiment, or it doesn't have to be your full-blown product or service, but you're just creating something to test a behavior. And you're going to say to yourself, well, if 20 people sign up for information about my service, then I've learned there is some interest in what I'm doing, so therefore I'm going to get them on a mailing list, or I'm going to, try to get another 20 people and so forth. And I'm going to build a landing page on my website to attract even more people. So you might assume initially that people are interested in your service, but you just don't know. So you're going to go out and try to find as many people as you can. And your hypothesis might be, if I can get 20 people or 10 people or 5 people or whatever number it is that you need to convince yourself that you're on the right track, you're going to get them to sign up. That's your measurement. You're going to learn from that interaction what they say about you. You're going to learn other insights and things that you didn't know going into those conversations, or trying to get them to sign up. Because if they sign up, great. If they don't, great. You want to know why. What's the hesitation? And then it's going to cause you to want to build or refine or change based on that interaction. So that's an experimental loop. That's the way this thing works. You kind of run it through this thing that looks pretty complicated. I actually have a wall-sized chart of this tool, but really what you're trying to do is create an educated guess. You're basically a scientist, and you're saying, if I provide some kind of stimulus, if I put something out there, I'm going to test this market, and you need to give it a metric, you need to give it a target, otherwise it's impossible to really test and track. And for example, my metric might be, hey, if we teach this process of doing an experiment map, then about 75% of the entrepreneurs that receive this training are going to do at least one experiment by the next class. And I can test that. I can actually see. It's really important that you use this sort of template. If I do this as an entrepreneur, if I'm providing some kind of stimulus to my target customer, then some amount, some number of customers are going to do X or Y or Z, whatever it might be. And you really want to map that out, and you stay true to that. And then you're going to tee up the experiment. You're going to design it and create it. And there's a whole process for knowing how to do that. But you're going to then let it loose and then see what happens. And these experiments can be run very quickly. They can be done in a couple of days. They can be done within a week or so. They don't have to run for months and months on end. You're just trying to get some really quick data. Some things you want to do is test behaviors whenever possible. Don't just test or trust what people say, because there's a gap between what people say and what they actually do in the world. It's very true. Again, so testing behaviors, not just talk. And you want to get some kind of currency or exchange with your customers. So that might be something like getting them to sign up, getting them to commit to a newsletter, getting them to give you some data about themselves or whatever it might be, or to do something that's extremely important. Ultimately, as a business owner, the currency you're going to try to aim for is some type of value exchange where they pay you for the thing that you're going to do. But they may not be ready to do that right away, and you might not be ready to take the money. Important, don't do surveys, because surveys oftentimes are fraught with bias. They have to be written properly, administered properly, interpreted properly. They're difficult, and you're not actually testing behavior. You're testing what people say and what they think in the moment, but you're not actually testing the do. And the do is absolutely critical. Try not to ask people to predict behavior, because when we start envisioning uncertainties and futures, our minds oftentimes don't do or go to where that person would actually behave or how they would actually behave in the future. And then don't inform subjects that they're part of an experiment, because that can actually bias it. What you can just say is, hey, I'm doing some research for XYZ, this thing that I'm trying to learn about. would you have a few minutes of, could you spare me a few minutes of your time to work with me on this? A lot of times people will be like, yeah, sure, I'll give you a couple of minutes. And you really don't want people to, you don't want to be giving them gift cards and that sort of thing for the experiment or for their time, at least not initially, because that again might bias the outcome. They might not be giving you objective information as a result of you sort of incentivizing them with some sort of prize at the end of the experiment. So ultimately what you're going to try to do is run this thing, and then as step 4 here, you're going to understand your insights and why that happened. Ask yourself, why did the experiment play out that way? What did I learn? Where did I get stuck? And then you're going to iterate and do it again. That's how you run a quick experiment. And if you're confused, reach out to an EIR. We can help you craft your experiment, design it, and help you get it set up and running. Once you do one, you'll pretty much have the ability to do more. Thank you.